Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. Consider checking out the monthly membership called Teach the Geek to Speak Society. You can learn more about it at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. My guest today is Ina Coveney. She's done quite a number of things. She's a business coach, she's a speaker, she's a podcaster, but she didn't start off that way. She worked in the tech field for a number of years, but left that behind to start her own business. I'm interested to learn more about her days in corporate, her transition to being a business coach, and her podcast, the Global Phenomenon Podcast. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Ina.
Thank you so much for having me, Neil. I'm excited.
Wonderful. I'm excited for you to be here. So from the bit of research I did on you, I saw you got a degree in computer science. What was the motivation to get that degree?
I was actually destined to write books if I had been left to my own devices. I wanted to study more like the grammatical aspect of language, and that's kind of where my head was at. And then I was about to be a junior in high school, and my parents are both computer people. I have been around computers since I can remember. And my mother suggested, she's like, "You're so good with computers. Why don't you give this a shot?" And I'm like, "Sure, I'll try whatever you want. What do you want me to do?" So she's like, "Why don't you take a programming class? I think you would love it." I'm like, "All right." So turns out they didn't have programming classes my junior year. So I took my first programming class senior year. It was a Pascal class, which is not an object-oriented language. There was no database behind it. It was basically just my variables and my instructions, and that's it. My project was to create essentially like a variable driven database. It wasn't even a database, just like variables to store post office information. And I had so much fun with it. I'm like, this is like playing a game. I just totally dove right into the whole logic of programming. And like, this is really like playing a game. And my mother told me, "Well, you would basically like," and this was especially back in 1999, computer science was like the place to be, right? This is in the middle of the tech bubble, right? Of the tech startup bubble of the WWW starting out, right? And she's like, "Well, people are going to pay you really good money just to do that." I'm like, wait a minute. You're telling me that people are going to pay me money to play a game, essentially? And she's like, "Well, yeah." I'm like, "What?" And I was sold. I applied to schools for computer engineering, not really understanding the difference between computer science and computer engineering. So I got accepted for the computer engineering department at UMass Amherst. And I went to the orientation and I looked at it. I'm like, "No, don't make me touch a circuitry board. Don't let me do any hardware. All I want to do is program. I am here for the software." So that first day, I walked into the pre-major office and I signed up for computer science, and the rest was history.
Oh, okay. So you started off in one place. In conferencing with your parents, decided to go to another place, and then you get to the place, and then you change your mind again and then go to another place.
I mean, it was all about, once my mother introduced what creating software was, to this day, I use those skills. To this day, I feel like I have a huge advantage over other people, the other coaches in the online world, because I can do so much, because I understand how things work and I can pick up tech really, really easily. So it's something that has really served me really, really well. But I loved my time learning programming. I thought that I was going to be a software engineer for the rest of my life.
Wow. I noticed also that you got an MBA. What was the motivation to get that degree?
So this was a few years into working in the real world, where I actually didn't get jobs as a software engineer. This was 2003, was right after 9/11. And if anybody can hear my accent, I am not from around here, right? I'm from Venezuela. And at that time, it was really hard to get hired by a company with a visa, because they basically shut down the whole thing. Like foreign visas, that's how the 9/11 attackers get in. Like, let's just shut the whole thing down. So it was actually really hard to find a job as an international student in the US. So the only job that I got offered was in the information management leadership program at General Electric, which was not a bad gig, right? It's a very, very prestigious program. They have to basically take tech people and turn them into managers. So, I went in not really knowing what this was. And I learned a whole bunch of skills that I didn't know I had. All the project management that has come from, that came from that program that I took. So I was basically leading other software developers. I was telling them what to do. And because I could speak their language, it just becomes a lot easier. And so right around that time, when I started working and I started basically raising in rank, I just realized that I didn't really want my boss's job. I mean, if I look at my boss and I look at their boss, and I realized, like, I don't want to be you in 10 years. I don't want to be basically where I am right now with the commute that I have, coming to talk to the same people that you're talking to. Like, I don't want this in 10 years. So that's when I started to think, okay, what else is there? And I always had this dream since I was 22 years old. I'm like, I want to get my MBA. I want to really expand and broaden my mind, not just in tech, but to understand the business world in general. So my company was offering, hey, we'll pay for your MBA free and clear as long as you continue working here. I'm like, all right, then let's do it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, I mean, if you have an opportunity to get free education, why not? Why not do it? Absolutely.
Why not? It was a bucket list item. I'm like, and I don't even have to pay for it. Okay, let's do it.
Nice. So then so now you're working. You finally get work at General Electric. You eventually get an MBA paid for by the company. When did you get to the point where you decided perhaps working in this corporate environment wasn't for you and that you wanted to do your own thing?
To be clear, I kind of knew that really early on. I just really didn't know what else there was. Like, seriously, I'm like, I grew up with parents who were very successful in the corporate world. So that's all I knew. Christmas time, we would go to their office and I would see what it's like to just be in meetings, to have an office with a whiteboard, to have an office with a secretary, right? Administrative assistants now, but that's what they were called back then. That's what I thought life was supposed to be like. So I didn't have any other examples of anybody else doing anything else. So when I was in corporate, whenever you would hear somebody, oh, I have my own business, you think, oh, you probably sell Mary Kay and Avon. And like, that's where our mind goes. And we think less of them because like, oh, that's just a pyramid scheme, right? So it's very hard to be in a bubble, in this corporate bubble where we have no awareness of the whole universe of entrepreneurship that exists outside of it. So it took for a friend of mine to suggest, this is, look at how things work. A friend of mine suggested that we started a mastermind together to just keep each other on track with our own life goals and dreams. And I'm like, that sounds great. What's a mastermind? So at the time, because I was commuting to work, I was listening to a lot of podcasts. I'm like, well, if I'm going to do a quote unquote mastermind, whatever this thing is, I want to know what it is and how to do it right. So I downloaded a whole bunch of episodes, of podcast episodes from people that I didn't know that were talking about masterminds. One of those episodes that I downloaded was one by Amy Porterfield. Her podcast is Online Marketing Made Easy. And she had a pretty good episode and I kept listening. And she was basically teaching you how to take something that is already in your brain, how to teach other people to do something and make money while doing it. And she has created a multi-million-dollar business doing that. She's her own boss. Her job is basically to show up on Facebook Live and to show up on Instagram and to show up on her podcast and just deliver her magic. And she gets paid for it. And I'm like, that sounds like a sweet job. Because I've always had this kind of like presentation bug, right? Like I've always wanted to be on stage. I've always wanted to be on camera. I did theater when I was younger. So I'm like, if I can couple that passion that I have, number one, for the tech, right? Because being a business coach or being out there, you need to know how you're going to do your website, how you're going to do your social media. If you want to start a podcast, what is that going to be like? And I could pick up the tech really easily. I had already been podcasting since 2012, just because I wanted to see what it was like. So coupling the things that I already knew how to do with just starting to teach people something. I didn't know that was a thing. And once I started to open myself up to that universe, that's when everything started to change. I realized there's an entire world out there of people making money, doing exactly what they want to do without a boss. And that's really when the bug started to hit. And this was years after I got my MBA. I got my MBA because I thought the only way to have a business was to really get VC funding, right? That's the only way that I knew how you could start a business. And then this opened up and I was hooked. There was nothing else for me after that.
Wow. You know, you started off when we started talking, you said you had this interest in writing, but then you also developed this interest in computers based on that, even on your parents. And then also you just mentioned an interest in presenting and being on camera. You seem to have a lot of interest, and you don't seem to have the need to focus on any of them. You pursued all of them. And I think that's really commendable, because oftentimes people figure that we start off in one place and that's just where we have to be, even if they're unhappy being there. But then obviously they end up disgruntled in whatever position they're in. But you saw these different avenues. You didn't see the benefit of just having to pick one of them. You followed all of them and saw where they took you. So I commend you for that.
No, the beauty of it is that I found a job that combines them. You see what I mean? I didn't have to choose. And now I have a job where I do a fair amount of writing because I need to do content creation, where I need to be on camera because that is part of my brand and it's how I teach, right? And where I can use the tech because I just pick it up easily. I started making websites on the side 20 years ago. So I basically found a job that combines everything that I love to do in one. And I really believe that people need to break out of the mold and realize that not everything is the way they've always thought it was. And to start thinking of what are your real desires? What are the things that make you happy? And I want to challenge everybody who's listening right now to find someone out there who is doing that thing and doing really well with it. Because our biggest mistake is to think, well, I really love knitting, but there's no money in knitting. No, I challenge you to find someone out there who's the voice of the knitting world, right? Have they written books? Do they have a podcast? Do they have a great website? Do they sell their own templates? Do they sell their own yarn? Do they have their own brand of yarn? Like, I look at somebody who has done it really successfully, and that's your new model for what your life could be like. Don't stop at the obvious of, if I like knitting, well, the only way to make money is to make knitted things and sell them on Etsy. That's not the only way to make money. Always expand your world and you will see what is possible.
Gotcha. So I mentioned in the intro that, you know, a lot of the work that you do is as a business coach. How did you focus or decide when you decided to go off on your own to be a business coach?
I think it was because I knew how to make websites. So that was kind of like my gateway into it, right? I had already been making websites for small businesses for 7 years, just on the side, charging pennies for it, just because I had a full-time job that was paying me really well. And I'm here thinking to myself, well, I don't really want to grow it. This is just to keep my skills sharp. So that was already my in. I had already been training myself to see what the online presentation layer was like for businesses, right? And I could teach that to someone. I could go, Neil, I could tell you, if this is your business, this is what your website should have, because I had already been training myself on online marketing too. So my passion for making people look good online, it lent itself really easily for me to say, well, then let me teach you a little bit more about how to run your business. Because one thing that I really would hate for everybody to walk away with is that they need a website for their business, which when you start, you really don't. But we all feel like we do, right? We want to seem professional. We want to seem like we have it all figured out. We want people to look us up and to see that we're serious, right? And for that, you need a website. You guys, I'm going to tell you what I found in all these years, that if the website is the first thing you want to get done, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're going to spend the next 6 months working with someone that you're paying extra because your project is going to continue to go, your website creation project is going to continue to go long and over budget because you haven't started getting clients yet. So you're still not really sure what is it that you offer? What is your main message? What are people going to find attractive about you and how you're going to attract them? So in the process of creating your website, you will change your mind pretty much every week. You're going to go back to your developer. And that was me. I was on the developer side of this. Go back to the developer and say, wait, I just realized this thing. Maybe we should change this. Maybe we should change that. You guys, don't start with the website. It's going to be over budget and over time. And I'm telling you that right now, that's what's going to happen because you haven't figured it all out. So I started telling people, listen, stop with the whole wanting to create a website right away. It's not as easy as you think. Everybody who wanted to hire me would tell me, but I just want something simple. I'm like, no, you don't. When I start creating your site, you will start to have an opinion. The ideas for your business are going to start to get clearer, and you will want to ask for more customizations. And that's how website projects just end up blowing up in budget and time. Don't start there. Start by getting clients. Step one, get yourself a client that is going to pay you for what you're giving them and see how it fits. Do you like doing that kind of work? Do you not? Do you like that kind of client? Just because you work with that person doesn't mean that that is representative of every client you will work with. Try somebody else. Try a different kind of personality. Try a different kind of niche, a different kind of industry. Once you get that down and you know what your message is and what makes you attractive to the particular client you want to serve, then you're ready for your website. So your question was, how did I start business coaching? Because of this. Because of what you're hearing me say, because I started developing an educated opinion of how people should start their businesses, and it's not by creating their website. So that's how I started helping people with it.
Excellent. And so is that the type of work that you do now, or have you expanded to other services?
No, that's pretty much where I am now. So last year, my program, I developed a whole program to help people with that problem. The fact that their website projects were just too long and too over budget. I'm like, well, then when you work with me, I'm going to give you the business part of it too, right? So we would spend half of our time defining the business to make sure that whatever we put on the website is the sure thing. And then I would spend 5 weeks making their website, and everybody would walk away happy. In 5 weeks, there isn't enough time to change your mind, especially when you spend the last 6 weeks determining what was going to be in it. So I solved that problem. I could deliver a website that you would love and that would not go over budget and would not go over time because we're building exactly what you wanted based on what we worked on. So that worked great. But then after that, I followed up with some of my clients that ended up with the magnificent website of their dreams, and they weren't getting clients. I'm like, why not? And they're like, we don't really know what to do. How do we get clients? Where do we find them? And I'm like, so I feel like, again, even though I was trying to solve a problem, I still wasn't giving them what they needed, which is how to get clients. We can sit here and define your business all you want, but without the ability to get clients, our website is just going to gather dust. All right. And that freebie is not going to get any signups. So now I decided to switch my offer this year to say, okay, let's start over. Let's get you clients. So that's what I have right now. Right now I have a premium membership where I teach people this is how you get clients. So that's what I do now. Before you do anything else, get yourself clients, get money in the bank, and then you can do everything else.
When it comes to the work you do in helping people get clients, do you focus on certain industries or is it industry agnostic?
I focus on online coaches specifically. So to define the coaching industry a little bit, it just means that you have something to teach others, and that is called a coach. So if you have the ability to help people with their mindset, if you have the ability to help people start a business, right? You're a business coach. If you have the ability to help people just make better decisions in their life to lead to happiness, then you're a life coach, right? And there's a million different kinds of coaches out there. Is whatever you can help someone with the stuff that is already in your brain. That's the kind of people that I help. I help online coaches.
All right. That makes sense that you decided to focus on a niche as opposed to somebody that says, well, I help anybody find clients, but because perhaps finding clients in one industry might be a bit different than in another. And if you don't have experience in that one industry and people are coming to you with that need to find it in that industry, then they might be disappointed. But because you have this experience in helping online coaches, if you're an online coach, then Coveney is definitely the person to go to. So smart. Exactly. That was smart on your part.
Exactly.
When it comes to just presenting in front of people, because as you know, that's what I like to talk about, people with these STEM backgrounds getting better at just presenting and communicating with others. Is that something you were always good at? And if not, what did you do to get better at it?
I'm going to tell you one thing. Because I did theater in school, that kind of took care of the stage fright. So I came into work to the corporate world without being afraid of being in front of people. But that didn't mean that I was a great communicator. It just meant that I wasn't afraid of being in front of people. And I'm going to tell you what turned me into a great communicator, which is going to be kind of representative of the times, right? Because I was, a woman with an accent, right? In a corporate world, in the IT world, no less, and dominated by men. It didn't really matter what I did. I was constantly being told that I needed to improve my communication style. Right. And that's just, if anybody has been familiar and following the Me Too movement, this is what women face in the workplace, is people not liking their tone rather than focusing on their ideas or focusing on their deliverables and their results, is, yeah, but I didn't like the way that you said that. Right. So I would kick butt and take names in my job. I was one of the best trainees in the program. I was one of the best workers that they had because my work ethic was always there. But when the time came for my annual reviews, what feedback did I get? You need to learn to cater to different audiences. You need to change your tone based on who you're talking to. That's the feedback that I got. Now, at the time, there was no knowledge of this gender bias that women experience in the workplace, right? This wasn't a thing that people were talking about. So I didn't know about it. I really thought the problem was me. I really thought they were telling me, you don't know how to communicate, you need to be better at it. And the fact that I was getting that feedback year after year after year, that really led me to just listen up and be like, okay, then what do you want me to do? How do I get better at this? And that's basically where it all started, is me not even knowing that this was a gender bias kind of feedback that a lot of women were experiencing at the time. It was more like, okay, the problem is me. How do I fix this? So I became much better at changing how I write emails, right? Instead of saying what I wanted to say, I would start thinking by, what does the person listening to me need to get out of this, right? So I started to reverse engineer what impact I wanted to cause, right? So if I want that person to say yes to this, then I can't just go and tell them everything from my perspective. I need to start thinking like them. I need to start thinking, okay, what would make them feel like this is a worthwhile idea to go for? And that's a skill that I use to this day with marketing, with content creation. I don't just go and say the things that I want to say. I think, what do I need my people, my audience to believe, to know, to act upon? What do they need to hear right now so that they can be better off? And that's how I approach my communication. So if anybody's out there listening and they're thinking of creating a personal brand around themselves, or just get better at communicating, never start with, okay, what is it that I want to say? Always start with, what does the audience need to hear in order to get the point that I want them to get across? So that would be a great place to start, and things that you can practice in everyday life. Talking to your husband or your wife tonight, right? Instead of going and telling them what you wanted to say, think, what is it that I want from them? What is it that I want them to believe, to think? And how can I present it in a way that they would say yes? That's something you can practice every day.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned something that kind of piqued my interest about being in this corporate environments and getting feedback that you believe was gender motivated. What's the best way to put this? What kind of feedback would you have been willing to receive that you didn't think was gender motivated?
If it had been anything related to my results, if it had been anything like, well, we noticed that this project was not on time. We noticed that you were focusing a lot of time on this area when really the job expectations should just be focusing on this area, right? There was nothing of that. I was doing a great job. So there was no feedback on my performance. There was feedback on how people were perceiving me, if that makes sense.
Got it. So then, you know what, I forgot to mention or forgot to ask you about your podcast. So what is your podcast about and what do you hope people get from it?
So because I speak to online coaches, one of the bigger things that makes us stop too soon or quit what we want to do too soon is the fact that we don't have a ton of great examples of how people were when they were where we are, if that makes sense. We see a lot of people who are very successful. We see a lot of coaches because this is what social media shows us, right? Social media shows us the people who are super successful, who have the large audiences, and they're telling you how much money they're making and they're telling you how successful they are. But I want to know, what was it like when they were like me, when they were starting out, when they didn't have all of these systems? What kept them motivated? What kept them from quitting too soon? So I sent out a few queries to people who are incredibly successful in my industry, like Pat Flynn, who's like the godfather of podcasting, to John Lee Dumas, who created a magnificent daily podcast called Entrepreneurs on Fire. And now he makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on his podcast, right? I wanted to talk to them. Right? Laura Belgray, who has teamed up with Marie Forleo. These are big names in the online coaching world. So I asked them if they would be interviewed to talk about their personal stories. They said yes. And that's what we fill the Global Phenomenon podcast with. On Mondays, I release an interview with an amazing, successful story. And I ask them about their background. I ask them about how they got to where they are and what are some things they can tell people like us who are down here trying to make it. What would they tell them to actually keep going? And then on Thursdays, I have another episode where it's just me coming and tell you, okay, now let's dissect that guest's business so that I can tell you what are some things you can start doing right now so that you can reach that success later on. So that's what the Global Phenomenon is about. The Global Phenomenon talks about the fact that the online coaching industry has provided a platform for normal people to be able to make money, as much money as they want, doing something that they love and teaching something they already have in their brain. That's the Global Phenomenon. So yeah, I invite everybody to listen to it. It's a great podcast. And now we're starting season 2 this month, and I'm very excited.
Wonderful. You know, this has been really great speaking with you, Ina. Thank you for being a guest. How can people get in touch with you?
Thank you so much, Neil. And thank you so much for asking. I am on Instagram all day long. My Instagram handle is Your Engagement Coach. No periods, no underscores, all one word, Your Engagement Coach. And if you're listening right now, go and follow, but don't just follow, send me a DM and tell me that you found me through Teach the Geek.
Wonderful. Everybody, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson, founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. Consider checking out the monthly membership called Teach the Geek to Speak Society. You can get ongoing support in your public speaking journey. And to learn more about it, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Ina.
Thank you, Neil.